This is Inside the BFA, the official podcast of the Balloon Federation of America. Each episode of Inside the BFA is an open discussion of the many aspects of the sport of ballooning and the BFA's work to represent its members and the ballooning community at large. Now, here's your host, editor of the BFA's Ballooning Journal, Glenn Moyer.
Hello and welcome to a brand new podcast for the Balloon Federation of America. I'm Glenn Moyer, the editor of Ballooning Journal, the BFA's official publication. Many of you, of course, probably know me. And tonight we start a new outreach effort on the part of the BFA to keep our members better communicated with, better informed, I should say, on exactly what the BFA is doing on critical issues that impact the ballooning world. We'll do that through this series of podcast communications programs, and the format will be fairly simple. I am the moderator, the narrator, the host, if you will, and I'll be joined each episode by a variety of guests who each hopefully will have expertise and experience in whatever subject we talk about. Each episode will be on a different given topic that we feel is of interest and impacts a large part, if not all, of the ballooning community. The format will be pretty simple. We'll introduce you to the guest. We'll have a discussion about the subject at hand. Viewers can log in, and in the chat room, if you have comments or questions, you can post those there. At the end of our discussion, near the end, we'll try to save a few minutes time to do some Q&A. We'll try to bring in some of those questions. I promise we probably will not get to all of them. We'll get to as many as we possibly can, and basically just try to keep you much better informed on what the BFA is doing on critical issues that are impacting the sport of ballooning. Our program tonight is called, oddly enough, The Drone Wars. Sounds like an outtake to Star Wars instead of ballooning. But to get us started, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the president of the Balloon Federation of America. Jason, please take the floor, if you will, and tell us what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Thanks, Glenn. Hey, we are really excited all of you are joining us. We think it is a great opportunity with these webinars or podcasts to really get out to our community what we're trying to do as the Balloon Federation of America for all balloonists. Today's going to be about drones. We have our call to action team that is going to be a part of this, and they are our experts. For those of you who don't know, the BFA has a call to action team that works directly with the FAA and the federal government to work on specific issues like drones and in our best interests. So we have Sam Parks, Pat Cannon, Dave Sullivan, and Mark West here that are all a part of that committee, or at least work with the federal government for us, that are going to share what they've been doing for the BFA and for the ballooning community with the federal government and with other organizations that are going to be affected by a possible change in the right-of-way in lower altitudes for all sorts of aircraft. So, Glenn, I'm really excited. We've got a group of guys that have 200 plus years combined experience in safety that are going to really be able to help our community understand what's going on with the drones.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. And Drone Wars is our subject tonight. And that, of course, has been brought to fore because we keep hearing that there is literally a pending NPRM that addresses Part 108, FAR Part 108, and that can have an impact on us as balloonists. This is not a new issue. It actually goes all the way back to 2021 when the BFA first started to look at this question, but it is now very much in the foreground. So to kick off our conversation, let me bring in Dave Sullivan, who is a member of the board of directors of the Balloon Federation of America. He is a longtime DPE. He runs a repair station in Fayetteville, Georgia, and is also the supplier of parts for those of you that still fly Aerostar balloons. Dave, we keep hearing about Part 108. What is it and what does it do?
Thank you, Glenn. Good to see you. To really give you an explanation of Part 108, it's worth talking about Part 107 for a few minutes. 107 was the regulation, or the regulatory guidance to be correct, that originally allowed drone pilots to operate their aircraft. That all came about, and of course, when the hobbyists started, and when the bigger drones started infiltrating the airwaves, so to speak. They realized that they were going to need some stronger regulatory guidance to keep those things in the air and hopefully deconflict them with the other aircraft that were there. Several years ago, 2022, ARC, an aviation rulemaking committee, put down a report, the BVLOS, Beyond Visual Line of Sight ARC report came out. And that's where we really started getting concerned about the issue. The report in and of itself was kind of a wish list for the entire drone community as to what they wanted to do. And right now we're looking at the impending issuance of the NPRM, which will be explained a little later, with 108 coming out. What 108 will do basically is legitimize the operation of, in our case, our concern is the delivery drones and to a somewhat lesser extent, the agricultural use drones. It's going to provide them a pathway to where they can operate those legally. They can do their back and forth, do their commercial runs, so on and so forth. There's a lot of 108 that we don't quite know what it's going to say. The report itself had a proposed Part 108, and some of the stuff in there creates a lot of concern. Our biggest concern, quite frankly, is going to end up being the low altitude right of way rules, as well as operations near other aircraft. To put it very bluntly, what they want to do, what it appears, is that they want to give the right of way to the drones if you're below. Right now, 400 feet looks like it may be going to 500 feet. But there's several areas of significant concern within Part 108.
So, Mark West, you were president of the Balloon Federation when this issue really first came to light back in 2019 to 2021. Mark, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is a past president of the Balloon Federation of America. He is also a graduate of the Naval Postgraduate School of Aviation Safety. Many of you will remember him as a long time president and chief engineer at Aerostar Balloons, and a number, his list of accomplishments goes on and on. I won't bore you with all of them now, but good to have you here, Mark. So tell us a little more about how might Part 108 affect the ballooning community at large if this change goes through?
Sure. When Part 108 was first fielded in terms of getting it out to the public to see what was going on, basically, as Dave said, what they were proposing was to make it so that that drones would have the right of way over all other aircraft within the airspace from the surface up to 400 feet. But they are also proposing that 400 feet be raised to 500 feet. And there's other people out there within that community that are saying that they would like to see it go all the way up to the top of Class G airspace. In that particular case, what it would force the rest of us to do is actually to be able to see and avoid drones operating in that airspace. Now, I don't know how many of you have tried to, you might have heard a drone in the sky, and then to be able to see it and identify where that sound is coming from, and then be able to think about how could you maneuver your balloon to be able to avoid that aircraft hitting you. When it first came out like that, what we did is we banded together as a number of different organizations within the aviation community, many of which were involved then that are involved now. I think we have almost 100% of the aviation organizations on board with us today. And we all fought that whole concept of us having to be able to see and avoid the drones. And what ended up coming of that at that point in time, after a lot of wrangling with them, was that they got it kicked back to the drone community to basically say that they had to continue to operate within line of sight of the controller, or they had to develop and institute an onboard system which would be able to detect and avoid the other aircraft that are out there. So they've been working on that for the past 3 years, and I know that some of the people that are in our balloon communities in different locations in the United States were actually contacted to be able to have them provide targets, if you would, for them to be able to test out some of the equipment that they've developed to be able to detect and avoid hot air balloons. And at this point in time, We don't really know whether or not any of that equipment was actually completed or brought online, or what the capabilities of it were. But now it looks like that all may be for naught, because what they're proposing is to go back to the original concept that either you have to have an onboard ADSB or some other type of device that announces where you are, or you would end up having to go back to the see and avoid of those drones. And so that's really what we're looking at here, and possibly faced with.
So, Mark, stay with me here for a moment, because I think many of us have seen the incident on social media where one of our pilots out west had a close call with a drone. You said, and you brought up the subject, that it would then be the onus would be on the balloonist to figure out, how can I maneuver my balloon to avoid that contact? Well, in this case, that balloon was in the process of landing. Mm-hmm. So how are we as balloonists to deal with that? And
that's a
I guess question. That's my question. How should we deal with that?
Yeah, that's a huge question that we struggle with. And in his particular case, he heard the drone just a few seconds before it buzzed right by him.
Right.
He had no idea that it was there, and the drone passed by the basket by something like 15 feet, and we believe that drone was, quote unquote, under the operation of line of sight, but I'm not sure that we know that for sure. And we also know that their response was, well, we didn't hit him, did we? So 15 feet was okay.
There's no blood on the runway, so everything's fine.
And none of us feel very comfortable about having something fly by us going that fast, which was approximately 65 miles an hour, and that drone weighed about 90 pounds. If you could imagine that having impacted a basket going 65 miles an hour, and what kind of damage that would do.
Pat Cannon is also with us, and Pat is another past president of the Balloon Federation of America. He has been a DPE for 54 years and has worked in the FAA community on behalf of balloonist and fixed-wing aircraft for over 35 years. Probably no member of the BFA knows the FAA better than Pat. So, Pat, we've talked about, you are a member of the BFA's Call to Action Committee. What is that committee doing? How are you interacting with the FAA, and what can we expect you to do as this goes forward?
Thank you, Glenn. It's actually a real pleasure to be here tonight to try to explain some of the elements that are going on within the Call to Action Committee. If you go back to, as Mark was mentioning, about 3 years ago, we had an opportunity to go public with our comments relating to the ARC. The ARC was looking for right-of-way for these drones going into the future. And we were very fortunate to have caused most of the relief that had been asked for by these drone companies to be tainted just a little bit with the comment that in all cases, the drones must give way to all other manned aircraft, or be able to detect and avoid all other manned aircraft. And that was a win for us. And it lasted for a couple of years, while in the background, we knew that the drone industry was they were putting together programs to try to ultimately get the FAA to approve these drones for beyond visual line of sight without them having the ability to detect and avoid, but for the rest of the industry to need to see and avoid, which is a very old concept. It is a bit past due now. The concept of see and avoid really no longer works in our low altitude community because of the types of aircraft, the speed of those aircraft, and the mixture of aircraft that we have. Aircraft that are less sophisticated, for example, powered parachutes, those that are middle sophisticated like balloons, and those that are flying in that low altitude stratum like EMS helicopters, which are high technology aircraft. But most lately, we realized that NPRM was going to come out, and 108 was probably going to carry language that would attempt to give the right of way to the drones. And we believe what it's going to say is that it's going to say that unless those aircraft are equipped with some type of conspicuity device, which could mean an ADSB type of device, that we would no longer have the right of way over those drones. Now, in the past, about 2 years ago, we began to talk to the National Aeronautics Association about that and their CEO. And he and his lovely wife have become good friends of our program with ballooning. They came and we hosted them in Albuquerque 2 years ago. And Amy Spowart now is our National Aeronautics Association president and CEO. And she has helped us put together a community of those people who operate commonly in the low altitude strata. That would include the Academy of Model Aeronautics, U.S. Paragliding Association. Of course, we are as a part of that. We have hang gliders and paragliding, and also the USPA, United States Parachuting Association. We've taken that one step further, and we have developed a coalition of people that was originally put together by AOPA. We joined that coalition in the attempt to get this regulation stopped or to get this regulation modified in a way that would continue to provide security and safety to people flying under 400 feet, especially those that have no ability to put a conspicuity device on their aircraft. To date, there are approximately 17,000 aircraft out there that are flying in that low altitude strata that are not able to put any type of device on the aircraft to show where they are. I'd like to bring the members to you on this. The coalition members are AOPA, EAA, NBAA, GAMA or GAMA. The Alaskan Airmen's Association is on it. NATA, USPA, that's the Parachuting Association. We actually have ALPA and NATCA, NATCA being the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, and Ag Aviation, NAAA. We are all in a single coalition, and we're working together to try to fight this regulation or to get it modified so that we can continue to provide safety in the low altitudes of operation.
Pat, you used a very big word in the course of that answer. I think it's conspicuity,
yes,
which essentially means an ident, that we have to be able to electronically ident, somewhat like, I suppose, a transponder for aircraft, which we know balloons don't have because we don't have onboard electronic systems. How, if that passes, how would the BFA react to that? Is there such a thing as a portable device of that sort? You know, we now have portable GPSs that we could strap to our uprights. Is there something like that in the works that might help us in this situation?
It's a very difficult question because there is nothing on the there's nothing in the books now in the U.S. that's in the process of being approved other than what we know already, which is ADS-B. ADS-B is impractical for us to try to use because it requires a power system on the aircraft. Currently, all aircraft that have no electrical system are exempted from any rule about ADS-B. Now, there may be other devices in development. There may be devices. There is one developing over in Europe that has been approved for use over there, and it is a small battery-powered unit and device. They are under development, but nothing is certified. Nothing has gone through that process here in the U.S. so far. So at this point in time, we have no ability to put any type of device on our aircraft to show where we are.
So let me bring Dave back in then. Dave Sullivan, given what Pat Cannon has just told us, what options are on the table? Can we do anything more than just say, we don't like this, take it away, and we either win or lose that argument? What else can we do?
Your question is actually, there's a two-piece question. There's an equipment side of that question, and then there's the human element to that question. From the equipment side, as Pat said, there are items in development right now, both overseas and in the United States. There's a couple of units that are being sold in Europe that could possibly be adapted to the United States environment. One of them has been pretty heavily tested here in the United States. The problem is signal attenuation. The signal is not dispersing the way it should. Therefore, the FAA is not going to prove it. There's several other units in Europe that show a lot of promise. Whether they end up here or not remains to be seen. Nobody has, to my knowledge, nobody in the United States, except for a couple of independent operators, are working that aspect right now. But I expect that's going to get to be a market here very shortly. So that's the equipment side. From a people standpoint, there's 2 or 3 potential options, if you will. The first one, and probably the least desirable, is do nothing. And strangely enough, there's a constituency out there that feels the best way for things to happen from here on out is let the FAA do what it's going to do. And we can't do that. We just can't do that because the environment at that point in time, the risk factor is going to get to the point to where we just can't operate within those constraints. We continue to provide documentation to the FAA. We continue to work with the coalition that's Pat's put together, which is probably the strongest coalition I've ever seen in this circle in ever. Mm-hmm. Great group of people to work with. I sat in on a meeting the other day and got some really good feedback. We need to continue to push our agenda just as much as the drone community is pushing their agenda. And I think we're doing a relatively good job of that at this point in time. We just need to keep going. We can't stop. When the rule comes out, the NPRM, which is already 2 weeks overdue, when that comes out, we'll be providing a list of talking points that people can write their individualized letters to. And that needs to happen. We need to get the support of the community behind us again, just like we did the last time.
That's a term that we have up on the screen and that we hear a lot, an NPRM, which of course is a notice for proposed rulemaking. And that is the way that we as balloonist individuals, myself and others who are pilots out there, crew people, enthusiasts who are involved in the sport, can have our say. We can make our comments be heard by responding to an NPRM. Pat, walk us through what exactly is the NPRM process and how will we when that NPRM is issued, what will be the steps that we'll need to follow from that point forward?
Well, the FAA has a rule that any regulation that's going to be put into place, even emergency regulations, must be covered by a notice of proposed rulemaking. In other words, the public has to have the ability to comment. What's very, very important in an NPRM is that those comments should not be faxed, or in other words, they shouldn't be copied. So you don't just sign a letter and then have everybody else sign a letter that says exactly the same thing. The FAA sees that process as an attempt to just flood their market with comments, and they're all the same. They actually put all of those in a pile and consider them to be one comment. So each individual comment needs to be that. It needs to be tailored from your heart, from your words, and sent to the FAA. I would suggest, of course, that we also do those comments to our local congressmen and senators. We need to get them involved. We have good friends. We do have friends in the system. Congressman Sam Graves, who heads the House Infrastructure on Transportation, is in the loop on this, and he has been sent, or is being sent now, a letter from the NAA group to show the displeasure we have with what we believe is going to come out in the way of giving the drones the right of way over all other manned aircraft.
Let me bring Jason back in as the current president of the BFA. Jason, clearly we have an excellent committee working on this process and working on this issue that we as BFA members need to keep in touch with, keep aware of their actions, and when the call comes out for us to get involved. How do you see that happening, and how will we communicate the need for the BFA members to take this issue on firsthand when that happens?
Yeah, so one thing, Glenn, is we're going to continue to try to do these podcasts on various issues, and hopefully this podcast has helped a lot of our membership and other balloonists as well understand what's going on. As Pat said, I think it's really important that we all do our part and communicate to our representatives and senators our concern. Pat made a great point that we need to not send in letters that are all the same, right, with the same talking points.
Form letters don't work.
Yeah, no, form letters don't work. We need to all write our own letter. Now, the BFA is going to email out to our membership talking points that people can use to write those letters, and we hope you will use those, but don't send the same one as your entire balloon club sends. Send each individual letter with its own written concerns. I agree with Pat wholeheartedly. Talking to our representatives and senators is hugely important. And if you can make the trip to their office, if they're in town, in the state capitol, I would go do that and shake their hand and look them in the eye and tell them that you're concerned. It's obviously great to send a letter or an email, but that personal connection sometimes may take it to a whole nother level. We will continue as an organization to send out emails that are informational on this topic, And as soon as the NPRM is out, we will let everybody know that and start the process of letter writing, etc. And Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's even a comment period on the NPRM that you can do through the FAA website once it's issued. So I think people jumping on that as well is extremely important.
Okay. I'm looking in our chat room and I don't see a lot of questions this evening on this inaugural program. So let me throw another one at you, Jason, that maybe it's an unfair question because you weren't prepared for this at all. But this is a new method of outreach for the BFA board and the BFA in general to reach out to the members, to keep them informed, bring them up to date on what the BFA is doing. We hear all the time somebody saying, well, what's the BFA done for me lately? This is a chance for us to bring people within the BFA to our membership and allow them to talk about those things. How will we go forward and decide what subjects will be in future episodes? How can people make input into the direction of this program going forward?
Yeah, so we are hoping to do several topics here in the near future. We want to share with everybody about our wonderful youth camps that we have. And we've talked to Duncan Donovan, who is our camp leader or liaison, and we want to do a show on the camps. We also want to talk to everybody about Class 2 medicals, because even though that's an issue that started several years ago, it's still very important. And there's still people that Pat and the Call to Action team are working with that are trying to get medicals even at this time, even though it's several years old. But we will, any current or relevant issue that is out there, we want to do a podcast about those and let the membership know, because as you said, Glenn, a lot of people say, what's the BFA doing for us? There is so much going on behind the scenes that people don't realize. And we as an organization need to do a better job of sharing that, what we are trying to do for the community.
Here's a question from our viewers this evening that says, the question is, what do we do as pilots if we see a drone operating in an unsafe manner? How should a balloonist react? And I'll open that to anyone on the panel that would like to take that. Pat, Dave, Mark?
Yeah, have Dave take that one.
Okay. Dave, you're up.
In the hop. Obviously, it should be reported. Interestingly enough, you can actually pull those reports up off the FAA website. And the first 3 months of this year, there were, and don't quote me, 425, 450 reported drone sightings or issues. The most recent report, which covered the months up through June, indicated close to 680. So the rate, and if you go back and you look at the historical tracks on that, the sightings are going up exponentially. Report it. I will tell you, I have some personal issues with the report. I don't think all of them are there. Quite frankly, the Phoenix or the Glendale incident was not reported or did show up on that report, which leads me to question the validity of it. But it does show the numbers. Bottom line is, call your local FSDO. Make the report. You got nothing to lose, but we've got to let them know there's a problem out there.
Hey, Glenn.
Yes.
I think one thing that's important, and I'm going to let the Call to Action team respond to this, but how, if I'm a balloonist and flying in my area, Kansas City, how can I know where drones are being approved to fly?
Excellent question.
Well, they're starting to show up on the chart, the sectional chart itself, and you know that you're supposed to have navigation charts on board the balloon, and we've always used street maps and a lot of localized charts. But what will happen if you look, or what is happening now with the FAA charts, is that we're beginning to show those drone operations areas. They're shown as a dotted line on the chart. They're beginning to populate the areas. For example, the Dallas area now has 9 or 10 of these circles, and these circles encompass areas of 10 to 15 miles around the launch location for those drones. So we're literally saturating the airspace here with drones. You can look at the charts, however, you can see them. Now, if you're in an area where you actually see a drone, depending on the type of drone, it's probably either Walmart, Amazon, or one of the other big box stores that's delivering who knows what to people all over your neighborhood. Take note of where they are. In fact, if you have an opportunity to go to that launch site, in some cases you may run into the people that are operating those drones, and they can give you a very, very good picture of what their operational area is considered to be.
Let me throw this as one final question before we wrap up and say goodnight. A question from one of the viewers. Does the BFA have someone that members can contact to report any drone issues to make sure that they're following the correct process? Is there a drone czar, for lack of a better term, in the BFA? Who would be the right person or persons? I would assume maybe a member of the Call to Action Committee.
We can take the call at the Call to Action Committee. What we will do is forward that near miss on to the appropriate location. However, you can do the same thing. There is a near miss report. You can Google it. It will come up. It's a fillable document, and you can send that in. It is recommended that you send that document to your local flight standards office, and it will be investigated. And to answer the question about investigation on the Glendale incident, that did go quite high up the chain. In fact, we know that it went all the way up the chain in the drone program with the FAA, and was being discussed with the drone operator at that point in time, because there was knowledge based on a camera on board that drone that they had traffic in the area, yet they somehow still missed it by only 15 feet. So that's a big question that was being asked, and I know the FAA is involved in that investigation right now.
Outstanding. Stuart Inlow, who's watching tonight, says that ForeFlight, if you have that app, will show you where drones are operating in your area, so keep that in mind. We have other questions, but I know, as I said, we just can't get to all of them. Firstly, I would like to thank the members of the Call to Action Committee who are with us tonight, Mark West, Pat Cannon, and Dave Sullivan, also to the current president of the BFA, Jason Jones, for this inaugural effort at a podcast. The drone wars, as it were, is an issue that is very critical to the sport of ballooning and will continue to be, with activity possibly happening any day now, as this long-awaited NPRM may finally be issued. So we hope this helps answer some of your questions. I would encourage you to get in touch with any board member or member of our Call to Action Committee if you still have questions that need answers, that you need help with. And stay tuned for information when the NPRM is issued on what the BFA talking points will be and how you can respond. It'll be very critical, as Dave Sullivan said earlier, that we have a very substantial effort to respond to that NPRM. So that's it for this first inaugural edition of the BFA podcast. I'm Glenn Moyer. It's been a privilege to be your host. We hope you've enjoyed the program, and we will see you next time. Fly safe, everybody.
Thank you for viewing this episode of Inside the BFA. Membership in the Balloon Federation of America is your entry into the sport of ballooning, whether you're a pilot, crew, or an enthusiast. Everyone is welcome inside the BFA. For more information, see our website at www.bfa.net.